Hello. Am going to do the post-observation conference reflection. I watched my first post-conference. I watched my second one. There was a huge difference in both of them. I think my first conference, I compared it to like my first lesson that I've ever taught, being out in phase one of my undergrad studies and not really knowing what to do. We had an outline, and I've had post conferences before, but it's way different from being in a teacher standpoint and a supervisor standpoint. My first video conference, my learning style, my supervisor, my leadership style was more of I did it, and it was so sporadic all over the place. I was jumping back and forth. I had a plan, but I didn't stick to the plan, and I just kept going from left to right to left to right to refinement to reinforcement to a compliment, and I was directing it, and I was so disappointed. There was some self-reflection on the teacher, but going back and watching it, it was just like, this is the worst thing that I've ever done. I don't really feel like I was a leader. I was being more of a boss, but I wasn't being a leader. And so it was just so terrible. So going into the second one, after watching the second one, there were many things that changed. The second time around, you can see, well, you can't see, but I scripted exactly what I was going to say for each component, the post-conference cycle, and I stuck to that. And I went in there, I talked with my field supervisor, and I really wrote out a plan. I scripted everything that I was going to say. I told the teacher, a reference back to my notes, so it could help me help my teacher reflect. So knowing that I stayed with those notes allowed for it to be a teacher-led post-conference, kind of like the Leader Meets student-led, student-based, and now this was, the teacher is the student, and she is leading her reflection in her post-conference, and so it did change, and so I was very proud of that, and so I felt like more of somebody who was just, like asking guiding questions, and the teacher would go forward and then her plan and then develop, and start talking about what areas she was successful in and which areas were deltas she needed to work in. I learned that I need to be careful on my facial features. I need to be careful on my nonverbal hand gestures. My leadership style is, wanting to take charge and wanting to give them everything that they need for their reflection. And so it was a challenge for me to step back and say, let the teacher do that. That's very difficult, especially, being a teacher, stepping back and letting the teacher, a student, have the student-based, So going forward, I think that my best, what I want to make in the future is that I want to continue, if I'm early along in my field, I want to continue scripting those notes and scripting everything that I'm going to say and having that plan. And so I know it may be unreasonable if I'm a supervisor and I have, 13 teachers to observe and have a post-conference with, those take time. And so starting out, I really want to script those notes. I really want to stay with that because it allows me to sit back and say, well, here are the guiding questions, and to have the opportunity for the teacher. I think that was a great benefit for me. As a conference leader, I find it so difficult of how you need to phrase things and what you need to say, constantly going over those T-test sample questions and going over that rubric. It got to a point of, what do I do when I don't know what to do? That's my thing, that I want to go forward and being able to step out of my comfort zone and say, hey, if I don't know something, like, what do you do when you've targeted an area that needs improvement? But, a lot of times a teacher will pick that area of improvement and what they said. And we hear about this, the teacher will pick it out. But what happens if they don't? And so that kind of what happened to me in my post-conference is, what do I do now? And so my field supervisor was great, and she said, go back to your rubric and look at the bottom of the spectrum where it's more teacher student and teacher centered and student centered, and you go about asking those guiding questions a different way. So I think being able to ask questions in different ways and being able to phrase my words is something that I want to continue working on for the future.